Hello again, lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. Not too long ago, we looked into a holocron about 5 of the nicest Sith Lords in history. For that video, we set the bar pretty low, because Sith, by and large, are despicable beings. But today we wanted to visit the inverse of that idea. The Jedi, who were the paragons of justice and morality, had several bad eggs of their own. Some who championed the ways of the light, yet committed reprehensible acts in its name. In this holocron, we are going to talk about 5 of the most vile Jedi in galactic history. However, this topic needed a few guardrails. It didn't sound like a very fun idea to just list off every Jedi that fell to the dark side. So our aim today is to do our best to find the Jedi who remained a part of the wider order, yet committed horrors through cold pragmatism and disregard for life or empathy. Now obviously the Jedi have had far more failures than the Sith have had philanthropists, so 5 won't cover every despicable Jedi who ever lived. These are just the ones that stand out significantly, but if you happen to know one that should be mentioned or that you want us to make a full video about, please let us know in the comments down below. Our first choice is Master Vrook Lamar. Vrook Lamar was a council member during the days of the Old Republic, particularly around Revan's time. He was one of the key figures that led the Jedi Order through one of its darkest ages. Having come off the heels of the Great Sith War with Exar Kun, he was tasked with helping rebuild the Jedi Order back to their former glory. But in his lifetime, he would see 3 more wars that would continuously bring the Order to the brink of total extinction. Yet, none of these are the reasons that warranted his attitude. He was arrogant, dismissive, and contemptuous. He regularly shot down all ideas towards progressing improvement without offering any solutions. He treated students terribly, regularly insulting them and calling them mediocre Jedi. Many excuse this as him being a tough teacher. He did, after all, want the Order to become stronger, but the more you peel back the layers, the more it's revealed that he was a control freak. He regularly argued with Master Vandar Tokare, one of Yoda's species, questioning just about everything that he did. During the Mandalorian Wars, he turned a blind eye to the suffering of thousands of innocents, and he was the largest advocate for the Jedi to do nothing as the Republic deteriorated around them. When more and more Jedi began joining Revan's quest to stop the Mandalorians, Lamar did everything in his power to punish and inhibit them. He felt frustrated by the diminished authority of the Jedi High Council, and would discipline any further defiance. He was the one to confront Revan and his followers on Cathar when they were investigating a massacre. Master Lamar insisted that the Mandalorians were not a problem, and the Jedi should just stay out of it. But when Revan found a mask, all of the Jedi present had a vision which displayed the genocide of Cathar. Only then did Lamar begrudgingly allow Revan to continue his quest, but he continued to publicly denounce their actions. To his credit though, Vrook Lamar did care a great deal about Jedi Padawans and their safety. This was often why he was so harsh with them and insistent on perfection. He wanted them to grow strong enough to protect both themselves and the Jedi. At one point, 5 false Jedi Masters who compromised a cabal known as the Covenant murdered each of their Padawans. The only one to escape was a Jedi Padawan named Zane Carrick, who they blamed for the crime. Master Lamar would recall the 5 Masters from Taris and chose to split them up. They tried to protest, but he countered with equal passion, stating that they had failed at the most basic duty of a Master, to protect their student. We suppose that this was one very good thing that came from his cynicism, but by and large, Vrook Lamar was unpleasant and ungrateful. He rejected the idea of Revan being redeemed back to the light. He even wanted to strip Mitra Surik, Revan's general of the Force. And when she came back to rescue him during the Dark Wars, Lamar criticized her methods, despite being totally helpless when she found him. Perhaps Vrook Lamar didn't personally commit any atrocities, but he represents and he even perpetuates every failure of the Jedi Order in this era. But speaking of failures, one of the rules of the Jedi that many take issue with is their laws against attachment. Their reasoning may be sound, as obviously jealousy and possessive feelings that come with love can lead one to the dark side. Many wonder why this rule is so widespread and leaves no room for nuance. Well, let's meet the one person that caused this rule, screwing it up for everyone else: Shayla Nur. Following the Great Sith War, many of the alchemical beasts created by Exar Kun were still running around in the galaxy. The Council would issue a period known as the Great Hunt. The Great Hunt lasted 2 years, from 3995 BBY to 3993 BBY. Shayla Nur was a part of the hand-selected team assigned to track down and cleanse planet of Sith-spawn mutant creatures such as the Terentatek. Accompanying her were 2 other Jedi by the name of Duron Keldroma and Gunhan Saresh. Shayla Nur was a very talented Jedi who had trained under the legendary Ud Banar. Prior to his death, he had gifted Shayla with the Solari Crystal, the oldest and most powerful lightsaber crystal known to the Jedi Order. The Solari was an incorruptible crystal which could only be used by those that were pure in heart and pure Jedi. Over the course of the hunt, she and her team were very successful, slaying monsters across dozens of worlds. But as the hunt progressed, too many Jedi were dying to one specific species, the Terrentatek. Soon enough, the council declared the hunt was over, as it became too dangerous, and most of the monsters were wiped out anyway. However, Shayla Nur and her team were summoned by the council and given a top secret mission. They were to carry out the final hunt on none other than Korriban. The Masters only trusted them for this mission given their expertise in hunting. The three were then dispatched directly to the Sith world. However, over the course of these years, Shayla had developed a romance with Duran Kaldroma, and the two had become an official couple. Unfortunately, Gun Han had also developed feelings for Shayla and had become jealous of their relationship. On Korriban, the three began feeling pressured from the potent dark side energies. Duran felt a deep foreboding about their encounter with the Terrentateks and encouraged the group to turn back. But Shayla insisted they press forward. She would proceed to compromise her Jedi morals in order to get more information about the beasts. Making a deal with a lowlife, she would acquire and trade him illegal spice for his information. This made Gun Han very uncomfortable, and he detested what they were doing. The final straw came when Suresh walked in on Shayla and Duran kissing. Indignant by their actions, Suresh began lecturing them about the code of the Jedi, and that their passion for one another would only put them in danger. An argument between him and Shayla erupted, until Suresh decided to abandon his group and the mission altogether. With emotions high, Duran and Shayla went to the caves of Korriban alone, where they faced a giant Terrentatek. During the fight, Duran Kaldroma died, sending Shayla Nur into a spiral of grief. She gave into the darkness that was festering within her heart as she challenged the beast. However, the Solari Crystal then resisted her, causing the blade to slowly extinguish into nothingness. And in the dimming light, another Terrentatek rounded the corner. A now unarmed Shayla Nur was left to her fate. The Solari Crystal was lost, recovered later only by Revan. It also seemed that Gun Han Suresh returned with news of their failure, as after this the Jedi Order formally outlawed relationships within the wider order. Before this, relationships in the Jedi were looked down upon but were not outright forbidden. Ulic Kaldroma and Nomi Sunrider had a public relationship, and other Jedi regularly had families. The Jedi were just expected to put their attachments aside when duty called. But following this event, the High Council observed how attachments, jealousy, and grief over the death of a loved one caused even the most righteous Jedi to falter. So they outlawed it entirely. However, they did not do it on a whim. They were convinced by another. Revan's time would give us one more despicable Jedi in the form of Master Atris. Atris was a historian and a custodian of the archives mentored by Kreia. Following the Great Sith War, Atris would work to revise how the Jedi operated in full. She saw their system as broken, and believed it was no wonder why Ulic Kaldroma and Exar Kun fell to the dark side. Atris would give a presentation to the Jedi High Council, stating that it was ridiculous for one master to train several apprentices, and for those apprentices to be taken in during their teens and late age. Atris lobbied for restrictions on how many Padawans a master could take, and the age of the Padawans that could be inducted into the order. She was also the primary one who vied for the prohibition of Jedi romance, citing that the two lovers, Zendor and Arden Lin, were responsible for the first Great Jedi Schism. Her arguments were considered strong, and they convinced the Council hook, line, and sinker. They gave Atris a seat on the High Council herself, and they would proceed to make all the changes to the Jedi Order that eventually caused most of their problems. In fact, all three of these prohibitions directly inhibited Anakin Skywalker's training later, but Atris was not done with her shortcomings. Atris had once greatly looked up to Mitra Surik, whom she considered to be her personal hero, but her faith in the righteousness of the Jedi was shattered when Surik joined Revan's army and entered the Mandalorian Wars. This left Atris with a sense of betrayal and confusion. She had thought the Jedi to be the paragons of truth, and everyone who betrayed them were workers of evil. But with Mitra Surik's rebellion, her black and white viewpoint was dashed to pieces, and she was infuriated by this confusion. She blamed Mitra for her new state of conflict, and soon, hatred grew grew in her heart as well. And when Meetra Surik was put on trial following the devastation of Malachor V, Atris was her primary accuser, convincing others that she had embraced the dark side. Many years in the future, the Sith Triumvirate would begin striking at the Jedi from the shadows. Darth Nihilus, Sion, and Traya were hunting groups of Jedi, causing them to simply vanish. Single targets turned to dozens, and dozens became hundreds. No one knew who this Phantom Menace was, or why the Jedi were disappearing. Master Atris would organize a convocation of Jedi on the world of Qatar, but she, using her fellow Jedi as bait, had leaked the information of the gathering in order to draw out their hidden enemy without telling her comrades. Because of Atris, Darth Nihilus arrived on Qatar and drained all life from the surface of the world, decimating a vast majority of what remained of the Jedi. She managed to survive and went into hiding with the rest of the Jedi survivors, unable to fight the new Sith threat. Atris determined to rebuild the Jedi Order on Telos 4, but she had surrounded herself with a library of Jedi and Sith holocrons. The Sith knowledge and power began to influence her mind, and she soon went mad. Behind her own back, she slowly and quietly slipped into the dark side. In her shame, she declared herself a Sith, and took the name of her former master, Darth Traya. Even Vrook Lamar was one to fall to her power. The real Traya, who was once again Kreia, had been manipulating many events since she was kicked out of the Sith Triumvirate. She had made sure that Meetra Surik would confront Atris on Telos 4, and Meetra shockingly managed to convince Atris to return to the light. In penance for her actions, Atris would remain on her academy, waiting until the real order was rebuilt so that she could face judgment for her crime. She at least got to redeem herself and surrendered to facing judgment. But the long-term effects of Atris's actions radiated throughout history all the way to Skywalker. But in direct contrast to the overprudence of Atris, our next entry is Thracia Cho Leem, a Republic Classic-era Jedi Master who had a scandalous secret life. Thracia Cho Leem was an atypical Jedi who was well respected by many people, and particularly admired by the High Council. As a consular, she was known for her healing abilities and her compassion. In fact, she had aided a young Anakin Skywalker out of potentially being expelled from the Jedi after he participated in a dangerous race. She had intervened and suggested that he need be given a mission to help find a sense of purpose. All of this seems well and good, but it was what she did behind closed doors that lands her on our list here today. She advocated against the Jedi's ban on marriage, and in direct violation of the code, she went out into the galaxy and had as many partners as she pleased. She was married several times over and had many sons and daughters all across the stars. It is unknown if she kept contact with any of these beings, but she was obsessed with Jedi procreation. She exclusively trained female Padawans and encouraged all of them to do the same thing that she had. One of the Padawans she trained was Vergir, a being that would later become a pivotal player in the Yuzhong Vong War, and the direct cause of Jacen Solo's fall to the dark side. Thracia Cho Leem's moral failings are much less malicious than other entries on this list. However, she retained a pretty vile attitude regarding attachments, overindulging in them without restraint and encouraging others to do so as well. What might be the worst part about this is that the High Council was well aware of all of her affairs, but because they respected her so much in other ways, they turned a blind eye, allowing her to remain a part of the Jedi Council. Our final entry is someone who without their inclusion would make any list of this nature incomplete, and that is of course General Pong Krell. Krell was a Basilisk Jedi Master who had been on the straight and narrow most of his life, until the Clone Wars began. He despised the clone army, believing them to be vat-grown subhumans, unworthy of rights as living beings. He held no regard for their lives, and would send them on kamikaze missions in order to achieve victory, sometimes even when he was bored. He had the most casualties of any Jedi Master on record. His extremist methods, however, did yield results, but soon his prejudice would take a dark turn. At some point during his meditations, the Force granted him knowledge that a new galactic war was on the horizon. The Jedi would be destroyed and the Sith would dominate the galaxy. However, he had no knowledge of Sidious and believed it was Dooku's doing. In order to curry Dooku's favor and hopefully become a shared ruler, Krell began sabotaging all Republic operations that he could. On the planet of Umbara, a world which had held crucial tactical importance, Anakin Skywalker was recalled away from the 501st, leaving Krell as the temporary replacement general. Krell would do his usual methods of sending clones into meat grinders of turret fire, resulting in heavy casualties. Krell ignored all protests and bullied and abused the commanding officers that questioned him. However, he soon concocted a truly heinous scheme. He pitted the 501st against the 212th Attack Battalion by telling each side that the other were Mbarans in disguise. This led to a massacre as clones fought against brothers without their knowledge. Captain Rex soon realized the deception once his enemy was unmasked, and they all stopped the fighting. Krell was placed under arrest for high treason by Rex as well as his commandos. But the Mad General would proceed to slaughter as many clones as he could by his own hand. Without the quick thinking of Tup, who utilized a native Mbaran monster to stun Krell, it is unlikely that the clones would have been able to overcome him. Although Rex intended for the general to face capital punishment, he was shot dead by Dogma after hearing Krell admit to his treachery. Without a doubt, no list of the worst Jedi ever is complete without Pong Krell, who to this day remains one of the most hated Jedi ever, and rightfully so. So my friends, what do you think about these Jedi trespassers? Who in your opinion is the worst among them? But now we turn it over to you. Who among them is the most vile? And who did we forget? Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch and support the channel. There is absolutely no channel without you guys. We really enjoy making these kinds of videos, so we hope you enjoyed listening to them as well. Until next time, may the Force be with you and have an amazing day.